And welcome to today's book proposal workshop. For those of you who are watching remotely and watch the replay, hello. For those of you who meant to be live with me a couple hours ago, hello to you too. I bet you're wondering what happened. The answer is that I had my alarm set, but when I came home from a doctor's appointment, apparently giving blood is something that knocks me out. Never has done that before, not giving blood, but having blood taken from me for my regular physical. Knocks me out. I fell asleep and I didn't have the alarm set in the room that I was in, so I never even heard it. So I woke up and thought, I think I missed something really important. I think I slept for about 3.5 hours. Really sorry. There's nothing I could do about it, but here we are. We're watching the replay. I apologize completely for wasting your time. Hopefully this will give you the chance to get started on your overview, which is going to be the next part. Okay, enough of that. If you have questions at any point, of course, you can always write to us, and I or one of the editors or Bethany or Elise will make sure that you get taken care of just as quickly as possible. I'm sorry again. All right, let's get into this session. All right, are you ready to figure out how to build the most amazing possible overview to attract publishers to your book? Because this is the big part. This is the big chunk. This is the thing that's going to make the difference on whether or not they read the rest of your beautiful proposal. So we're going to talk about that right now. The first thing to remember, of course, is that we can't guarantee you're going to get a contract from this, but we can guarantee that you'll be taken seriously and you will look like a real author, and they will give you the chance to greatly increase your chances. Because honestly, as an agent, so if I see someone who sends me something that's probably a pretty good idea, but it's not very well executed, or it's not in a proposal format, I'm just going to send it back to them and go, put this in proposal format and come back when it's done. Or if it's a really great idea, I'm going to sign them right then. And then I'm going to tell them that they have to hire a writer, which is probably between $10,000 and $20,000 just to do the proposal. And then to have someone write the book based on that proposal, $30,000 minimum, up to maybe $150,000, depending on how big the book is and how much it sells for. So there's a lot of reasons for you to do this. The other big reason why we had you do the competitive list last week, and we're going to start with the overview this week, is because it helps you understand where your marketing is, where your book will be positioned in the world of publishing, because you can bet that the agents and the publishers will be thinking about that. And this is to teach you to be a professional as an author, so you can think about that too. So we start with these competitive books because we want to figure out if there's a current market for your content. If all the similar books are selling above 150,000, not very well, or they're all old, right? People put in old books, then we know that the market is not there. What does that mean to you? That means that you need to change your approach. It doesn't mean you have to throw it out. It just means you need to change your approach to something that is likely to sell. You have to do the competitive list exercise again and revise your idea. Remember the concept of the Trojan horse. That's the worst that it means. It doesn't mean you're an idiot and your idea is stupid and it'll never sell. You're going to go eat worms, right? It doesn't mean that publishers are wrong. They're a bunch of idiots. They should go eat worms. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means you need to adapt to what's real in the marketplace. The next thing is, are similar books doing well? This is an obvious one. If similar books are not doing well, it's a clear indication that probably yours isn't going to do well either. Trying to get a publisher to take a book on when other similar books aren't doing well is a big fat no. And if an agent is smart, they won't take you either. Getting an agent is not the same as getting a publisher. Getting a publisher is getting a publisher. Publishers won't take it. Even if you find some young, inexperienced agent to take you on, it won't sell if there are similar books that are failing. That's just market sense on the business side of publishing. And also, this is your chance to figure out if there's anything that you didn't think of in your original idea for the book that you need to be sure is included, right? That's important. Your Trojan horse might be in that and you didn't even know it. This is how you find that information. But what if no similar books? People always tell me this. Oh, there are no similar books. That's not a good sign. The fact is that similar books definitely do exist and you need to just find them. If you didn't find them in your experience of looking, it's because you weren't looking for the right thing. I don't know if anybody didn't turn in their competitive list yet or not. If you didn't, you need to get going on that. If you think it's because no similar books exist, you probably want to just search harder to find things that are loosely similar. Of course, there's nothing exactly like yours, but as close as you can get proves that there's a market, right? Publishers are not very risk-taking kind of people. They're usually very conservative. The agents are risk-taking, yeah, agents, but publishers really aren't. They want to take only the sure bets, the books that they're certain are going to sell. They're not always right, but that's what they're trying to do. So you need to prove to them that there are similar successful books that have recently been published. You need to also be able to look at this as an opportunity to really go deeper into your subject matter. Because if you were writing on some obscure part of this topic, but something that's a little broader or narrower than what you had intended is selling like crazy, well, that's an indication that you might want to replicate the aspects of it that are successful. It also allows you to build that NDBM, and it also leads you to take competitive advantage over those books, because if they were published, in 2018, 19, 20, whatever, those books can't be fixed. They're already out there. They're stuck. They're stuck in their time in history. Before the pandemic seems like a million years ago to me. So it probably does to you too. It certainly does to publishers. So this is your chance to bring the best, greatest, newest, most exciting content so that you can pick up those buyers who already have, let's say, 5 of the 7 books of their life that they're going to buy on this topic, but also to get anybody who's new for it. So you're the first or second book someone buys on that particular topic. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, remember the process: the sponsoring editor, the other editors, the salespeople, the marketing people, and that precious publisher. We talked about this last week for a reason. The only thing I told you last week that all of them read for sure before they go to that meeting to vote on your book is the overview. That's why tonight we're going to start working on the overview. That's the most important thing you can do to get them to come hither and start paying attention to your material. The overview is the only part that they all have to fall in love with every single time your book goes to Edboard. You must do your very best writing in the overview. It's not the writing that you would do to a consumer. You never use you. The editor has no problems. The publishers have no personal problems. They could have the most outrageous temper tantrum throwing 2-year-old or 3-year-old, and your book could be about temper tantrums for children, but we never actually address it as if that editor is actually dealing with that problem. An editor is supposed to be not emotional about the book. Of course, it doesn't really work that way, and they're making subjective personal decisions all the time, but we want to pretend that it's objective. We'll talk more about that. So this Trojan horse idea that I talked about last time is really important. This is where it gets serious. Probably statistically, some of you are disheartened by what my editors told you about your competitive list. Unless they said, this is great, run with it, which is rare. Unless they said that to you, you probably heard feedback that you didn't understand or didn't want to get. And I'm sorry about that. We don't need to read your competitive list again. You don't need to resubmit it. You just need to think about this from the perspective of the Trojan horse. If there are all these books on the topic, is yours a little bit different? Could yours be skewed to a different audience? Could it be expanded or contracted? What NDBM could you bring to it to make yours look like the fresh new idea that they'd like to buy? The Trojan horse with all the old ideas that are still true and valuable stuffed inside of it. They're still going to need, someone's writing a book on how to grow a business. They're still going to need to understand sales management, marketing, finance, all that other stuff. But maybe there's a new way you could say it. This is what you have to think about. This is where the work comes into being a published author. People who don't want to do this will be unhappy with this news, but here it is. This is what makes the difference between people who hope and talk about becoming published and people who actually get a contract. Your best idea could easily also be hidden inside a bunch of extra words in your head, or that when you started writing it and you were inspired at 3 a.m. and you wrote 9,000 words or whatever. The challenge is that you're coming to this with expert blindness, and there may be things that you don't remember that people who are new to the subject don't know. You may have overwritten your material already. I have one author who I love to bits. I said, okay, your proposal is perfect. She took the last session. Your proposal is perfect. Please just write me your sample chapter. I want to be her agent. I believe in her and her book, and she's worked all over the world teaching the methods in the book. It's brilliant. Write me a sample chapter, and she sent me 18,000 words. That's a third of a book. a fourth of a book. Nobody's ever going to buy a book with one chapter that's that long, and nobody has that many things to say. So I made her work with an editor. She paid an editor to cut it down to what it should be, 5,000-ish words. That might be your case too. I don't know your material, but it might be something for you to think about. On the one hand, I'm trying to do a one size fits all class because some people who come to this have self-published, others are just thinking about their idea and don't have anything written down, whatever. But on the other hand, one thing I've noticed in teaching this now to literally thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of writers, is that if you listen to what I'm saying here and you distill it and you really do pay attention, maybe it's good for you to be watching a replay instead of seeing it live with all that energy around it. If you listen to this, what I'm telling you is the way to get published. This is a pretty straight and narrow path. It's not really open to interpretation. Once you learn how editors think, which is what I'm teaching you, how agents think, which is what I'm teaching you, and how to structure your material from the perspective of the publisher who has that power to sign that check and make your book get out there, you will have an incredible competitive advantage over all those people who are doomed to self-publish, or worse, who give up and don't even put their beautiful message out in the world. You're giving yourself an amazing gift, and you're giving the world a gift by doing this. Nothing I say is meant to be discouraging. It's meant to encourage you to do it the right way, because you'll find it's much faster in the future to do it this way than to bark up the wrong tree. Okay, it is time to be flexible. I love this guy. I wonder if he can type in that position. Looks like a very advanced yoga student. It's time for you to be flexible about your material. It's time for you to really think about it, maybe in ways that you've never thought about it before, but put it in the back of your head and let that start to percolate so that you can end up with a really beautiful book proposal when it's time to start shopping it. So your assignment for this class will be writing the overview, that piece that everybody in that meeting reads. Now, here's the problem. In publishing, we get lots of proposals. Agents do, publishers do. Remember the big stacks. Ours are even bigger. We're probably seeing, I don't know, somewhere between 100 and 200 projects a month, kind of depending on the month. Early part of the year, everybody makes a New Year's commitment to finally get published. You know, in November, they're not thinking about books. So you get fewer then. But it's pretty true across the industry. So if this is the most important thing, if this is what everybody's going to look at first, then you really want to put your heart and soul into this. You really want to think about it and put your energy into it and do your very best work. It's not written in the same way a book is. There's no you, like I said a few minutes ago. You don't say, you have this problem, or I'm going to solve your problem, because that's what nonfiction books do. You're saying a reader might have this problem. The readers are facing this every day. This is the most important part. I'm going to give you 2 weeks on this homework assignment because it's so important. Please excuse me. I guess I got to get my blood count back up. Anyway, okay. So how do you write a compelling overview? The 3 questions that the overview answers are: who's going to buy this book and why? How do you know? And why are you the right person to write it? The whole overview is only going to be 3 to 5 pages. That's it. It doesn't need to be longer, and it shouldn't be longer, or people will start to get bored. You want to think about who's going to buy this book and why. How do you know? And why you are the right person to write it. What does that mean? Who's going to buy this book and why? What this means is, what benefit will someone get from reading your book? People buy books for a solution. They buy nonfiction for a solution, right? Books can inform, educate, inspire, or entertain. In the case of a nonfiction book, it's usually some sort of benefit. If you want education, it's for some benefit. You want to know how to build birdhouses or overcome some disease. You want to figure out how to be a better parent or a better golfer or whatever your thing is, right? What is the benefit that the consumer will get from purchasing your book, as opposed to the 10 or 20 or 30 other books out there? Because you know they're there because you just did the competitive work. How can you be certain, and how can you prove to an agent and a publisher that you know that this is a great book, that you know, telling us, I mean, if I had a penny, everybody goes, well, you know, you were stupid. You rejected my book and it's going to be a New York Times bestseller. Hasn't happened yet. Not in my whole career, 34 years. So I'm pretty sure that nobody's really living in fear. Authors say this, I know an angel told me this is going to be the best book ever. That's probably not going to cut it either, even if there are angels out there telling people about their books. The point is, you need to prove that your book is better than the others. You need to prove that the people will get the benefit. The way you do this is by using facts that are not yours, facts that are other people's facts. I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. So how do you know people even need this kind of help, right? So here's an example. You would use a statistic. So let's say you have a book on, here's an example from this class, on concussions, right? So what happens with a traumatic brain injury called a TBI? So what happens in a case of a traumatic brain injury? What are your options? How should you be cared for? Or whatever the author is going to go with that. I don't remember the details from the class last week, but let's say you're writing that book. Okay, so here's an example. The first statistic that you're going to put in the overview to prove that there's a market is this many people have traumatic brain injuries per year. So what the publisher does in their head is go, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that many people got traumatic brain injuries in the United States in a year. And that's very interesting. Well, and those people probably have friends and relatives who would like to help them through this. And then of course there's doctors, and they start adding the numbers of potential book buyers for your book in their heads. Now, let's say it's something else. Let's say it's the imaginary parenting book. If anybody in the class is writing a parenting book, I don't remember right now that you are. So please know that this is not specific about you, although the brain injury person is in this group. So let's say that it is a parenting book. Well, it's not going to help to say, there will be 17 million 4-year-olds next month in America, right? That's not going to help. But what we could find is a statistic about the increasing amounts of stress parents have because their children aren't ready for kindergarten, or I don't know, whatever your deal, whatever your angle is, finding numbers, finding statistics, finding science, finding research, right? Like real research. Johns Hopkins, I told a client today, she said, oh, research indicates. I'm like, research indicates means I made this up, right? That's what a publisher sees when they say research indicates. But when they see, and she came back to me and said, well, it was from Johns Hopkins. I'm like, then say that. So she said, Johns Hopkins University study, blah, 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 named this by these doctors in this year, said that, and I'm not going to give away her book, but, said that this is a problem. And then there was all this other research that she had that supported it that needed to go in subsequent paragraphs. I would love for you to find some research. Even if your book is a memoir, I would love for you to find research of how many people made a great success of their lives after, I don't know, coming to the US as an immigrant at 14, speaking no English. I don't know. Figure that out. That's on you. But by having this, you're proving that there's going to be a benefit to the reader that will make them shell out $25 for your book, because that's the job. The job is not writing a book. Our job, yours is, our job is making books cross cash registers. My job is to make them believe it will. The publishers believe it will. Then the publisher's job is to make the book. And your job is to have written something that will make enough people want it that they leave the store with it and leave their money behind. That's how we all get paid. Sorry, it's a business. Also, what evidence? So this is part of the evidence of what proves it. This is what people are going to get for it. You want to say really quickly what people are going to get for it. My book will help people with traumatic brain injury to see the options for their recovery. My book will help parents who are struggling with preschoolers understand how to prepare them for, I don't know, kindergarten or Montessori or whatever they're going to do. I don't know. You also want to start to think about your avatar. Avatar is a marketing word that refers to who the psychographic, how the people that you want to sell something to think, what their general religion are, what their general beliefs are, what their general whatever education level, and then their demographics. So their demographics is how much money they make. That's where the education goes. Their race, if that's relevant. All these other things. Where are the people psychographically and demographically who are most likely to buy your book? So my baby is 30. I'm not going to buy a parenting book. I'm done, right? But I might buy it for her if I really believed in it when she has children someday. Maybe that'll be your book. Maybe it won't if you're writing a parenting book. But you understand what I mean? Everybody is not the market for your book, right? People often want to send me relationship advice books for men. Here's the problem. The industry has shown conclusively, at least for the last 34 years, that men don't buy relationship books. Men are given relationship books by their women or goaded into buying them by their wives and girlfriends, but they don't wake up in the morning and go, I wonder if there's a relationship book I can buy. Maybe 5 or 10 men on the planet do it, but in general, the publishing industry has massive research to prove that they don't buy them. I can't sell it because they already believe they're not going to buy it, right? There's a lot of stuff like that. So you need to be clear in your overview right away about who's going to buy your book and why they're going to buy it. What do they need from you? That's what we're looking for. The faster you get into that, the more excited the editor is going to go. And what the editor is thinking, it's not what you're thinking. The editor is thinking, if 47,000 people have a traumatic brain injury every year, I don't know the number, right? And Johns Hopkins said that this is the best way to get better. And this author had a brain injury or runs a brain injury center or is going to interview all these big hotshot brain injury people. That's interesting. Doesn't mean the editor has any personal interest in the subject. They may or may not, maybe their brother-in-law, who knows, but it does mean that they're very clear that there's a viable market. Now, if your market, I had a pitch today, direct pitch through LinkedIn. People do that all the time. I don't know why, but they wrote me on LinkedIn and she said, oh, my book is for people who are studying mechanical engineering. I'm not even really sure what mechanical engineering is, sorry to say. And her book is only for people who are juniors or seniors in college or in the master's program for mechanical engineering. So that would be an academic book. I don't handle academic books. So I wrote her back and said, you need to find a university press that specializes in these kinds of books. Don't be worried. They're only going to give you a $2,500 or $3,000 advance. If you want me to take a look at the contract, here's my fee. And she wrote me back and said, well, I don't want that. I want HarperCollins or Simon & Schuster to acquire this book. And I told her, that's not going to happen. That's not what they're in business for. Bye. And I'm sure she won't write me again. But the point is, that's the truth. If your book is so niche or so deep in something, then you're going to be self-publishing, or you're going to find a publisher who's known in that niche. There are political extremist publishing. There's metaphysical extremist publishing. If you're believing in crystals and past life stuff, I'm not making a comment. I'm just saying there are certain publishers who will handle that kind of stuff and publishers who won't. So this is where you start to differentiate. The publisher is also asking, as they read this overview, which hopefully the agent has sent to an editor who's bought and is interested in books like this, so it's not a mistake. But were it to get to the wrong editor, they're going to immediately go, well, wait, I don't handle books like that. It either should go to my colleague or it should go into the rejection pile. Nobody wants to read something that isn't right for them. They're not going to figure out on page 4 of your overview, oh, what an interesting idea. It doesn't work like that. You have to grab them in that first week, the first sentence, paragraph. You have to grab them in that first paragraph and start to suck them in from there through the whole document to get into that editorial board. I hope I've belabored that point enough. Okay, so how do you know? The first question is, who's going to buy this book and why? Second question is, how do you know? Are you an expert? Now, if you're writing a memoir, you're an expert on your life. I got nothing, right? Good luck. You're probably an expert. Maybe this is the next Glass House or Eat, Pray, Love. I don't know. It depends on how well you write in those cases, which is a whole nother discussion that I don't care about because nonfiction isn't about writing quality, especially. Also, but are you an expert? So if you're writing a book on traumatic brain injury, forgive me to the person who's writing on this. I'm not trying to harp on you. And you don't even, all you're writing about is your first person experience. That has some value to some group of people who have also gone through it or might go through it or are trying to help someone else through it. But it doesn't make you an expert necessarily. It makes you an expert in your own situation. On the other hand, if the person who's writing that is a brain surgeon or a neuroscientist or specializes in this medically or runs some research group or whatever, then you're an expert. That's the difference. And that's the difference in how much they're going to get for the book, which kind of agent you're going to attract, and how much enthusiasm you're going to get from a publisher. Enthusiasm measured by dollar bills. So do you teach on it? Do you speak on it? Do you have your personal life experience? If you're writing from life experience, has anyone else applied your methodology? If you're going to say, I'm a parenting expert because I have 3 kids and they're really well behaved, that's great. But have you taught this enough, or you otherwise disseminated your material enough that tens of thousands of people have used your method and said, oh my God, this is incredible. This is a breakthrough. You'd need to have that. If you don't have that, there may be some ways to get around it, but it's going to be really hard. I'm just telling you. Okay. Can you prove your success with statistics? So this means, do you have a social media following? Did you ever conduct any research? Is there research out there that supports your theory? Can you find that research? Was it done in the last 5 years? Can you do a metadata study? Is there anything you can do that will support the fact that you are an expert? You can approach this book as a guru. I am the guru. I have all knowledge. I can write on this, and I can come down from Mount Olympus and tell the peasants how to live this, and I'll be right. Or you can be a journalist and you can talk to a bunch of people. So if you have some credibility, but not absolute credibility, then you need to think about interviewing the key people, 5, 10, 20 of them in the industry, the people who you would love to have been if you'd had a different life path. That's fine too, but you would need to be able to state that, and you'd need to be reasonably sure that you're actually going to have a conversation with these people. They're going to pick up the phone. Once you have a deal with a publisher, everybody will pick up the phone to talk to you. That's how it works. That's one of the big advantages, is you can get into anybody and say, look, I need 15 minutes of your time. I think you're a perfect example of this, and I'd love to interview you. The other how do you know is who's got this problem, right? We talked about that in the last slide also, but who's got the problem means, can you identify and quantify that audience? We need to convince the publisher that there's a big enough audience for them to invest the money in your advance and in the production of the book and in the distribution and marketing of the book. That could cost them anywhere from, 20 to, well, in case of a client I have coming out next month, $500,000, right? So it kind of depends on a lot of factors. And if you don't have enough to push them to write that check, you won't get that check. That's how it works. You might get a little check, but you won't get a big one. And you want a big one, believe me. Okay. So why are you the right person to write this? People want to dump in, for some reason, into the overview. I don't know why, but in this class, it must be something I'm not saying. So here's what I'm saying. The thing about how wonderfully qualified you are can only be 1 to 3 paragraphs in the overview. Even if you are the world's greatest, whatever, or you are a doctor in the subject matter, or you are some sort of world-renowned thought leader, you got to get it over within about 3 paragraphs. The rest of the overview needs to be about the why. Who's going to buy this book and why, and how do you know? You can sprinkle it with some content, but the part about you is only 1 to 3 paragraphs. Please don't write an entire overview about how wonderful you are and all the people who said you're wonderful and your mom thinks you should write a book. Please don't do that. Please don't be that group. We've had so many people who write that stuff, and that's not what's going to impress professionals who are looking at your material and 100 other things that week. I want you to especially mention any speaking or teaching or courses or work that you've done, media attention, even if it was long ago, social media, followers, students, whatever you've got, right? Especially if you're the world's leading something or other, right? I have a client I sold last year. He is the world's leading expert with the most successful program in the world. Psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and social workers who are counseling people who have attempted suicide, right? Really super tiny, little tiny niche, right? This morning I sold Albanian rights. Like, I sold Albanian rights to that book, which isn't even published yet in the United States. How crazy is that? Also, if you are a coach or a consultant or anything, I'd really love you to name drop some of your big hotshot clients, right? If you're a consultant for companies, please name drop, oh, I did this for Microsoft and Merrill Lynch or whatever you did. Please use that kind of stuff in those 1 to 3 paragraphs, because that gets attention. That's what they're really looking for, the lucky charm. That's the real piece that they're looking for when they figure out that you have good content. Who's going to buy this book and why? How do you know? And why are you the right person to write it? If that sounds like there's some overlap, there is. It's one document. It's 3 to 5 pages long. Then you sprinkle the overview with content. This is not in chapter 2, I will do this. And in chapter 3, I'll do that. And then in chapter 4, don't do that. Just make it really clear who's going to buy this book and why, how do you know, and why you're the right person to write it. That's what you need to do. Then sprinkle it with the content, right? Your authority on the subject is more important than the details of the content right now. Your content is secondary because they want to first know that you are an expert, and that you have the pieces of the puzzle that will help you sell the book. That's what they're in it for, right? This is why your NDBM is so critical, because it is the concise communication about how your book is new, different, better, or more than all those other books they published. Because they can type in a couple of numbers, the ISBN from the back of a book, right? This is the ISBN, right? So, and this thing whatever, it doesn't matter. They can type the ISBN into this big program and they can find out instantly how many copies that book sold. I told you that last week when I mentioned how we were going to do this between the 1 and 150,000. The reason for that is as they know, and they've published those books because that's why they're seeing yours. Any smart agent isn't going to send a book on parenting to somebody who only does graphic novels for teenage boys, right? They're not going to buy it. I'm not going to send a parenting book to a business book editor. That's why people who say, oh, I know somebody in publishing and they're going to pitch it for me, right? Probably not, right? That will probably not work in most cases because editors specialize, agents specialize. And you would, as an agent, you would only send it to editors who specialize in the same things you specialize. And why do agents specialize in certain topics? Because that's where they make money. So we spend time sending Christmas presents and cards and baby gifts and all this other stuff to those 15 or 20 editors who do the same kinds of books we do. I do business, science, and self-help. That's pretty much it. I've done other things, had successes in other things, but for the most part, that's what I'm known as. So the editors who acquire business, science, and self-help know Wendy Keller or Keller Media. They do. And that's because I've sent them things for years and then they bought things over the years or whatever. That's true for all agents. It's not just unique to me. I'm not special in that way. Every agent specializes. So based on what your book is, it will only be sent, it'll only be acquired by agents who are going to sell it to editors who also specialize. It's completely thin vertical. I hope that's clear. It's the most important thing for you to remember about what's going to happen when you're done with this process. So if you've got who's going to buy this and why, how do you know why you're the right person to write it? And you've sprinkled it with some content. Now you're ready to get this going so that your content can be explained in the future parts of the book. That's done in the competitive analysis, which is a version of the competitive list you started, and in the chapter summaries, which is where it really gets deep into the weeds about what you're going to do, because nobody really cares about your content in general. I don't read the books I sell. Nobody does. It's just the truth. There's not enough time. The people who are reading and editing them in New York are editing them. Editing is a different job than reading for pleasure or edification. It's the nature of the business. We don't read these things. I read every single word multiple times of the proposals that I represent, but I don't read the books. If I wanted the answer to the question, this one's on navigating your parents' senior years. If I wanted that, I would just call her and say, hey, honey, I need some help with my parent, right? So it's not about content. For you, it is. For the audience, it is. But initially in the overview, it is not. Sorry to burst anyone's bubbles. Okay. The reader is the third person. What I said earlier is true also. This is the second most common mistake when people write overviews. They write it as a you. You could, your child, your situation, your traumatic brain injury, that's for the manuscript. That is not who you're selling to. You're writing a business plan to a business person who doesn't have the problem. Please remember that. You want to use phrases like the reader will learn, or book buyers will finally understand, or just like the thousands of people in my social media group, or the tens of thousands of people in my audiences all over the world have discovered, That's third person. Those people over there. Like I've said in the very beginning, a book proposal is to publishers what a business plan is to venture capitalists. And for the same reason, you want a stranger to invest their money in your idea, right? You wouldn't go to your bank and say, hey, I'm thinking of getting a business loan because I want to start a donut shop. What kind of donuts do you like? It's stupid, right? That's you get a no right away, right? The point is that what you want to say is that these people will get it, and there are enough of these people, and I am enough of an authority, acknowledged authority, ideally on the subject matter, that my book will be successful and it will earn you money, and you will keep your job as an editor, and you will be able to rise in the publishing industry, and your publishing house will stay in business. That's what's really going on. Don't delude yourself. This is about art. It is not about art any more than painting or sculpting is about art. It's always about the buyers. Okay. Editors have no problems. Okay. So here's what this means. You will not use the word you anywhere in the overview. After you've written your overview over these next 2 weeks, go through it and look for the word you or your. And if you find it, change it to third person, right? Editor doesn't have the problem. The editor is not interested in your content. The editor is not your book buyer. You cannot do this. I know you go, some of you are like, why is she stressing this? It's so minor. Others are like, but I want to. Okay, so please don't, just please don't do it. Okay. Do not use Q&A format either. Q&A is who will buy this book and why in bold. And then people who will buy my book. No, this has got to be in prose. It's got to read smoothly. This has got to be your most beautiful work. If you were writing a business plan, right? This is how you write it, is prose. Prose is not Q&A, and it's not chunky. It's not separated by hard transitions, right? You got to have soft, smooth, well-written transitions to take the reader, pull them into next paragraph, next paragraph, next paragraph, because it shows you can write, but it also shows that you're so excited about the idea and that you're really organized and that you're approaching them as a professional. Pleading with agents and publishers isn't going to get a book deal, right? Writing something that's high level professional is going to get a book deal. Don't use Q&A format. I know this slide is garish, but it's that way for a reason, so that will get burned in your retina and that you won't write it in Q&A format. So it should not look like this. Who is going to buy this book and why? Blah, blah, blah. How do I know? Blah, 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 right? That's not how it should look. This is how it should look. Here's an overview, blah, blah, blah. You can see here it says, you'd think I'd be able to read that. The obesity issue in America reached a crisis level, according to a recent Harvard study, 31% of Americans, whatever, who knows? And then there's a one there. That one would indicate at the end of that first paragraph, that one would indicate a footnote at the bottom. You would probably not use the footnote in your in the actual book, but I like them personally in the overview for sure. And now what is your book? Who's going to buy this book? Now you know it's the 31% of Americans who are considered morbidly obese. The second paragraph says my book is the first NDBM to offer every person, regardless of socioeconomic status, whatever, an easy, free, complete, whatever method, blah, 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 right? I wrote that just as an example of what it should look like. This is what it should look like. This is how you meld it together to make it look optimally professional. I hope that makes sense to each of you. Okay, because here's what editors see. The first paragraph is giving me 100% clarity on who's going to buy this book and why. I don't have more questions. I'm good. I understand. If I believe that you are the right person to write it, we're probably sold on this material, assuming that the numbers match from the competitive analysis that you'll be doing, and you're a decent writer, as I'll determine from the sample, the editor will determine from the sample chapter, and the chapter summary shows NDBM throughout. Well, a chapter summary rather. So that's what we need to know. That's what they're doing. They're looking at this critically. They're going to say no at the first opportunity. The first little twinge of no is a no, because there's so much out there. There's such a deluge. Meanwhile, like I said, although there's this water all around them, they're dying of thirst, because very little of it is written in this way and differentiated in such a way that there's a market with a quality author behind it who's got a growing platform and a good NDBM. That's why I teach this class, because this is the part where I get passionate, because everybody has the ability, if they're willing to open their minds, they have the ability to create what will make them get successful as an author. I have 31 published books, my friends, under 9 different names. It's not rocket science. My first one, I was 26. It really is a lot easier if you just follow the rules, even if you're not a rule following kind of person, I promise you. Okay, so next it says, my book will offer every person, blah, 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 a method by which to create permanent weight loss. So what does the editor see? The editor now knows that you're going to figure out how to pitch this book in the giant spectrum of the millions of weight loss books out there. Now, the issue of weight loss books is different than a lot of other books, because there's so much competition for that space that, frankly, you need your own very successful TV show to sell a weight loss book now. But this is not about weight. This example is to give you an example, not necessarily to talk about weight loss. If you are writing on weight loss, it will be 100% dependent on your platform, because that's that market right now. There's nothing I can do about that. Nobody can. But otherwise, for everybody else, this is an example of how to structure it so that you see what it looks like and what it feels like, and so that you start to understand what's going on in the agent and the editor's head. As an agent, I'm thinking, if I read an overview and I don't already have 5 editors in my head and go, she would like that, he would love that, oh my God, they would totally love this at HarperCollins. Oh, if I'm not doing that, it's not my project. I won't say yes, because if I don't know who I'm going to sell to, what the hell would I sign it for and put it on my shelf? That doesn't make anybody any money, and it hurts the author. I would never do that. No agent would if they're making a living. So this is how the business is going. This is the inside view that you're paying me to show you. Okay, so the editor is thinking these things. It's pretty much specifically, what does the world need another book on weight loss? Not really, right? But your book isn't on that. Does this author have the right credentials, right? Are you qualified? So if you want to write a book on weight loss because you lost 40 pounds, not going to sell, right? Nobody cares. Have you taught other people though? Have you done something amazing? Did you invent, I don't know, some equipment or some method, or did you do something amazing? Do you have some kind of no public awareness of who you are, right? Do you have studies to back up your methodology that you had nothing to do with, right? That would prove that you're probably telling the truth, right? A lot of people lie, right? How many times have you taught this? How many times has the editor seen it, right? If we've seen it 1,000 times, it's going to be less likely to get picked up. And if you sell enough books in any category, sales, management, marketing, finance, entrepreneurship, my categories, pretty much have seen everything under the sun. You really have to hit me with a 2x4 with your content to get me excited. I've seen every leadership book I feel has ever been written. I've read 90% of the ones that are popular in my lifetime. You better have something really exceptional, or you better be coming at it from a perspective that I haven't heard 92,000 times, or you better be coming with an authority from some niche that I haven't heard, because otherwise we've seen it all. What are you going to say? Have integrity, care about your people. Okay, that's not news. So we're looking for what's interesting. The editor's very keenly looking for new, different, better, more. Next, they're going to be asking, and you can't control this, they're going to be asking, how will this compete with the previous books we've done on this subject, right? I've gotten rejections from perfectly qualified editors because they had something in the hopper that I have no way of knowing about that is too similar. Basically, they bought something 6 months ago and it's so similar that they can't take another one because it would compete with their own work. Or they are the author, they're the publisher of some big shot book in some category, and they feel like mine is shaving just a little bit of that market, and they don't want to damage their lead horse, basically, right? They also don't, the opposite happens too, where they tell me, gosh, Wendy, we published so-and-so 2 years ago on a very similar topic, which everything's similar, right? And his book isn't doing well. It might be in that 1 to 150,000 range, but if they expected it to be in the 1 to 10,000 range, then we're screwed. There's no way for us to know that. It's a constantly changing kaleidoscope. That's part of what makes the job fun, is that things are always changing. And if this person doesn't take it, that person will take it. And then this, that, like there's a million moving pieces. And you multiply that by 20, 30, 40 books a year. And it's a really fun job. And I'm not pitching my job, but it's really fun to see how the different things happen and they change. And if I sold this person that book, then they're not going to want this book because they are competitive. It's just the way the market goes. But you really want to put yourself in the editor's chair to get them to keep reading so that they turn the page at the end of that overview and go to the next section. Okay, this is important. We want them to be excited enough to keep looking. We want the people who read the overview in that ed board meeting to keep looking at their particular section, or to come to the meeting at least somewhat already on your side. The easiest response is always no. Believe me, there are so many no's. This is how, what I'm telling you is how you can avoid being a no, getting a no on your material. You'll always get some no's, but you also want to get a yes. The fewer no's you get, the more yeses you get, the more money you get. So please read that quote. Madam, I need not eat the whole egg to know that it is rotten. There's a story about the famous editor Maxwell Perkins, legendary in his time for developing some of the best writing talent of American literature. And a woman came up to him at a cocktail party, allegedly. This is the story, and not my story, but the story I've heard. And she said, Mr. Perkins, I sent you my manuscript and you did not acquire it, but you didn't read the whole thing. And Maxwell Perkins allegedly said to her, Madam, I need not eat the whole egg at my breakfast in the morning to know that it is rotten. I love that because the no could happen in the first paragraph, in the first sentence, in the first page, in the first half of the proposal, or when they get to the last page of the proposal. What we're trying to do is safeguard your precious, beautiful book so that that sponsoring editor, the first person the agent sent it to, just keeps saying, oh, yes, yes, yes. The number one word I hear from the editors to whom I've sold books is, Wendy, I'm so excited about this project. That's what we want to have happen for you, because then we have kismet. Things just start to happen. I want that for you. You want that for you. This is how to make that happen. So here are some tips on writing your overview to make it even better. This is the single most important part of your proposal. So I want you to really give it some thought, right? You should be starting to look at those competitive books, particularly the one that's most similar to yours. You probably should read that, the majority of the words in that particular book. But I really want you to start working on this. So this means mentally and physically. It's not something you can sit down and just type up and it's all done right away. This takes some time. I'm going to give you 2 weeks till our next class, because that's about what it will take, especially if you're reading competitive books in the meantime. I don't want you to dash something off and throw it at my editor and say, nah, they're going to read it. It'll all come back to me. That's a waste of the editors, right? That's a waste of the editor's time, because if you aren't sending us your highest quality work, how will you know what the highest quality edits are going to look like on your highest quality work? So I want you to be sure that what you're sending is the best that you got, so that you can get the best edits, so you can do the next version of the best that you've got with their input. Give yourself time to start to absorb the books that you're looking at and that you're reading. Probably by next couple of days, most of you will have cemented your final competitive list, the first assignment. That will probably be done. If we sent you comments on it, we don't need to see it again. We don't need to see it again. You just need to get those books and start reading them. Like I said earlier, looking for what's good and what's bad and what you want to include, and making sure you write down the page numbers. It's so important for you. Trust me on that. So you want to be looking at those and putting that into your head. You want to be putting what I said in this lecture in your head. You want about thinking of who's going to buy this book and why. How do you know? Why am I the right person to write it? What is the reader going to get out of it? I want you to think about all those things. This is the ultimate creative process. Look for clues also in your environment. When I was writing my 16th book, I was driving on the 405. I had taught basically a micro version of this class to a bunch of people in San Diego. And I was driving back to my house in Malibu on the 405. Those of you who know California, the 405 is pretty intense. But as I was going through the Irvine area, I think it was Irvine, there was a billboard. And the billboard was something about banking. I don't remember what it was now, but something about banking. And the quote that the ad copywriters had used fit perfectly into the chapter I was working on that book at that moment. And I was like, and I took that quote exactly. I made it the chapter title, and I wrote the entire chapter just because of that very strange inspiration of a banking commercial, which had nothing to do with that book. So what I'm saying to you, and this isn't to be all woo-woo metaphysical, but this is how the brain works. When you buy a car, you suddenly notice that car or that color car or whatever everywhere around you. When you're pregnant, those of you who are guys may not know this, but when you're a woman and you're pregnant, you notice every woman who's pregnant and you think, why are all these women pregnant at the same time? They always were. You just weren't paying attention. People were always driving cars just like the one you just bought. You just didn't pay attention. So when you kind of adjust your lens to start thinking about this book and how you're going to help your audience and how you're going to attract a publisher and an agent, you'll find clues everywhere. So open up to that. Start to take pictures with your phone, take notes on your phone, take notes on paper. I don't care how you do it, but let all those ideas come to you. Even if you can't use them in the overview, keep them all. For now, just put them in a file of some sort or some kind of collection device so that you can use them later. But I bet that something will happen and it'll start to spark ideas for you as this book grows. That's really how it tends to work. The creative process works like this for many people. Go back and look at Einstein or Tesla or other great thinkers of history or artists. This is how it goes. So I'd like you to also consider interviewing an expert or two. If you are a superstar in your industry, you probably know a couple of experts already. Go ahead and pick up the phone and just kind of have a chat with them about what you're thinking. Maybe not say, hey, I'm writing the book if you think that they're going to compete with you, but ask them some questions. If you know what the primary target for solutions, so people who have, I don't know, kids with ADHD, right? So let's say kids with ADHD who are trying to get them ready for school, if that was your book. So maybe you would talk to a couple of people you know who are experts on the subject just in the course and say, I've really been thinking that blah, blah, blah would be a great way to get kids to be ready. What do you think about that, John? Just listen to some experts. That's a great idea to kind of figure out whether or not you're on the zeitgeist. Another thing is to talk to a couple of people who have the problem. So, you're in the store and somebody has a psychotic kid that's jumping off the walls. And you could say, I'm interested in the subject of ADHD, or I have a child with ADHD and I'm doing research and whatever. I don't know, maybe that's offensive, but the point is try and talk to some real people on the ground, the people who are your potential readers for this book. You don't have to tell them you're doing a book unless you want to, but you could start to hear their real person on the street questions and thoughts about this. And that might trigger something great for the overview and for the book itself in your brain. I don't know, but it's certainly something to think about. Next, you might be a visual learner. So even if you don't know you are yet, lots of people make it through high school and college without realizing it, but you might want to sketch out a diagram, literally with a sheet of paper or a big sheet of paper, like a flip chart or a whiteboard, about what someone would have to learn first, second, third, so forth, to figure out the conclusion that's at the end of your book, right? So what would they have, what process would the reader have to go through? And then summarizing that process in the overview might give you some real deep insight of a way that you could talk about who's going to buy this book and why. Here's the thing. You probably have already forgotten way more about your subject matter than anybody who reads your book is ever going to know, because they don't want to be an expert. They just want to be better than they are. If they wanted to be you, they'd be taking the same educational and life path that you've taken. Probably they haven't. So they're buying a $25 book to solve a multi-million-dollar, multi-thousand-dollar product, right? We say that self-help books they buy because they don't want to spend $200 an hour in therapy. It's $25 versus a year in therapy. It's a pretty good deal, right? If you can get the results. So remember that they're not coming from Mount Olympus where your brain is because you've had all this experience, right? They're just beginners. They just need what they need. Or if you're writing for people who are intermediate or advanced, they still don't know as much as you know, but try and think about what they will need to know, what the foundations will be, so that you can mention that in your overview and definitely in the outline of the book, which comes in a couple weeks. Okay, I hope this is helpful. The overview is 3 to 5 pages. It is in prose format, not Q&A. I think I've said that enough times, and you shouldn't use the term you. Make sure you don't. So here's our editing terms for everything you're going to write going forward. If you submit your first draft of this overview by 5 p.m. on the deadline, which is 2 weeks from tonight, that's March 2nd. If you send it to us anytime before 5 p.m. on our next live class, you will get 2 reviews of the overview, the one that you turn in and another one that you submit anytime before the end of the class, right? It would be in your best interest to turn it in around week 4, because then you'll have more time to do the edits and get more feedback. But so if you turn in this document by 5 p.m., you will get those 2 reviews. Otherwise, you're only going to get 1. That's how it goes. Everything else is just 1 review. Goodbye. Take it or leave it. There's no gun to your head. This is your book. This is your idea. You can be right. You can do it your way. I've given you all the instructions that you're ever going to need to do this in the class, and I will do that going forward too. So for this one, you will get 2 edits if you have the first draft in by 5 o'clock on the deadline. First review is going to give you edits from 1 editor. The second is going to give you edits from another editor. In publishing, I'm sending it to 20 people, right? 20 different editors. They all have a different opinion. They all think this should be highlighted and that shouldn't be. By getting edits from at least 2 of my editors on this document, you will have different perspectives that are both equally valid. These are well-trained people, editor quality, publishing house quality editors. So you're going to have the same kind of experience, but by getting feedback from 2 editors, you're not trying to please the first editor with, oh, I made the changes you suggested. It's not about that. It's about trying to create a universally appealing document so that you have the most significant competitive advantage. I hope that makes sense. You are never under any obligation to take any of our advice, our edits, our suggestions, none of that. You never have to do what we say ever. This is your book. This is your life. It's all on you. I'm just telling you how to do it if you want to get it sold, right? And I'm not saying that to be rude or arrogant. I'm just telling you that this is how you do it if you want it to end up getting a contract. And if you want to reinvent the wheel, I got nothing. Go for it. But I'm trying to help you to get through the industry the way that the industry works and give you editorial support and the mindset of the editors. Most people, when they get to the last week of this class, tell me, you know, Wendy, it was really crazy, but I had a totally different idea about how publishing really worked because they saw it in the movies or whatever. None of that's real. This is how it really works. I live in this business every day of my life. Okay, my friends. So how do you deliver your content to us going forward, right? First of all, the publishing industry works in Microsoft Word, not Mac. You cannot deliver a Pages file to us. You will not be allowed to deliver a Pages file, a Mac file to a publisher. It has to be a Word doc or docx file. That's how it is. I don't know. I don't make the rules. That's just how it is. So I want you to deliver each section separately. So you did your competitive list. Thank you for that. Competitive list dash your last name. That would have been the file name that you submitted. Thank you. This one is overview dash your last name. That's what you name the file. Don't add other words. Don't put in the title of the book. Don't put in, anything. Just your overview dash Keller, overview dash your last name, right? The reason we're delivering them all separately is so they can stay organized in your head and in our editing system. When we get to the end, I'll tell you how to assemble the whole thing into one big document for one last edit. But for now, they all have to be handled separately or this will become chaos. Trust me. Okay. So also meet the deadlines. Okay. My people are going to edit you in the order received. So if you're the first person there, you're going to get the first edit. That's great. If you're the last person there, or you deliver it, let's say you, for whatever reason, don't write the overview for 3 weeks, even though you have 2 weeks to do it, well, they're going to be editing something else. And your overview will be at the bottom of that stack. It won't be at the top of it when that comes in, because they work on the assignment that we're focused on that week. Anyone who turned in a competitive list has gotten it back. I made sure I checked that before class today. Actually, I checked it before I went to give away all my blood. But I also know that your overview in the same model, right, needs to be turned in a way that we can get it, the first version, back to you as quickly as possible. So if you have it by that second class, third class. If you have it turned in by 5 p.m., they will get it back to you in the next day or two, three days, whatever it is, as fast as they can in the order they come in. And then you'll have that time to think about, a couple of weeks maybe, to think about what edits you want to take, if you want to take them all or none or whatever, and work on the second version so you can submit that too, right? These are called developmental edits. We talked about that last time, which just means they're giving guidelines and suggestions. You do not have to take them, but it is probably in your best interest to consider them seriously. Okay, so your homework is due in 2 weeks. That's March 2nd. There is no class next week. We don't have class next week. You should be reading your competitive books and you glancing at them, reviewing them, skimming them, whatever you're going to do well enough so that you can speak clearly to your NDBM in the overview. And you should write that overview not more than 3 to 5 pages and deliver it to us no later than 5 p.m. Pacific on March 2nd. We will see each other March 2nd. I will be there. You will be there, and we will live happily ever after as we prepare your brilliant proposal for publication. Once it's served to editors, your life will be much easier, and you'll be thinking, oh my goodness, she was right about this. Look at the reception I'm getting from agents and then from publishers. That's really how it works. All right. Meanwhile, keep on reading those books and keep on taking those notes, because you'll be so glad you did. And thank you. You did it. Congratulations for sticking with this process. I know that the climb gets a little steeper this week, but you're going to be able to do just fine. You have everything you need. Go back and look at this if you need to. Go back and look at this, review the sections you need in this replay. Again, if you have questions, just send them in. We'll make sure to answer them as quickly as possible. I wish you all the best. Have fun with this part. It's a lot of fun to do it. Once you know it, you'll be able to use it over and over and over again. Now, probably you're starting to see what I said about, this is a way to test your book ideas in the future. This is where this part all starts to come together in the overview. Good luck to you. I hope you have fun doing it, and I hope you do a great job. I can't wait to see your proposals at the end of the course. Bye.